How did the nation of the Republic of Texas become the state of Texas, and what role did international law play during this time? Chief Justice Cannon, do you have an answer?
The issue going back to that period of time, you have to understand what was considered the law of nations, which was as a regime that established principles that attached to what was then considered civilized countries. In that, under the proposition, as we understand, as that being the annexation and compatible with the law of nations, was that there was only two positions to acquire territory. One was either by treaty or one was by conquest. And when we look at that issue, and especially with these gentlemen right here and multiple others in our research, what we've gone back to find is that this resolution, as considered binding on both parties even under the law of nations or the intent of that period of time, considered it to be a treaty. Now, I know there was multiple debates and arguments on both sides, but being that it was a domestic issue as far as the constitutionality of this issue, bringing Texas in as a state, that was the limitation on it as far as the understanding, because it was domestic, as their rebuttal or argument to this annexation. But equally under that law of nations, and as today, which is the same definition, it was an agreement between two high contracting parties or two nation states. And that's what our research has shown us, is that that agreement, whether it's called a resolution, whether it's called a compact, whether someone would refer to it as a contract, those international relationships was, and it's very clear and defined, it became a treaty. And that's the position that brings it to being an international obligation or a precipice or principle that we look at as binding on both the U.S. and Texas. And that's our position. To look at this as multiples to do today, because what some of the subjects that are brought up are those relationships with the Indian nations or with foreign powers. And within those foreign power relationships, it's understood that that treaty becomes binding. In other words, there's obligations on both parties. And our reference to this shows us that over a consorted time period, we see that those obligations have been abrogated. They've been neglected. And that's what our stand is to look back at that, relate it to today as far as Texas being independent. And the necessity is that someone, and that's what the Republic of Texas has done, is step forward to let the people of Texas understand there is a treaty and it's binding and the obligations have failed. And we are in that position to bring this to the people of Texas, to let them understand that that is what we are working for.
Thank you, Chief Justice.